It's time for dinner.
Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong.
From the creative mind of Scott Bertelson, after 4 decades of teaching our impressionable youth,
The dinner bell.
you are invited to enjoy conversational morsels for the mind at Mr. B's dinner party.
Yeah, dinner.
Hello out there in podcast land. Oh, yes, I know you've missed me. Like that wart on your hand. My audience, my participants are already laughing. What a great trio I've got in here today. Now, you remember, folks, that I've interviewed... Oh, yes. Welcome to Mr. B's dinner party. Are you hungry? Oh, yes. I'm hungry for a little intellectual thought. I'm hungry for a little laughter. And I'm hungry for the belief that everything will go well with this podcast. So, with that being said, there's a long story there. If you want to know more about that, please text me. I won't give you my number. All right. So, with Mr. B's dinner party, we have been looking at elementary teachers, listening to them. They were on recently. Did anybody listen out there? Hello? What did they say? There's a quiz. All right. Then I've interviewed middle school teachers. And guess what? Now it's time for high school teachers. And I have the following 3 representatives here from Forest City High School. Yay! We're going to start with Josh Sparrgrove. Josh Sparrgrove, what's your name and what do you teach?
Josh Sparrgrove. I teach high school science along with directing musical and coaching speech.
Great. And what will be the musical next year?
You will find out in a couple of weeks when you come to Fine Arts Wars night.
I'm not coming to that.
Well, then too bad for you.
I see. Attitude once again. Anyway. But I'm very happy for you. I'm glad you had a good year. I'm sure you did. And next we have the lovely... What's your name, dear?
Janelle Koch.
Oh, very good.
And I'm a high school business teacher, assistant coach for volleyball, and work with kids in FCA and a bunch of other things. But
I think that's amazing. And I want to tell you, and this is, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but you look like one of my favorite actresses on The Young and the Restless. Yeah.
That is a fun fact, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I can't think of her name right now, but she's going through a mental breakdown. I hope I can't say that for you. Okay. But anyway. My audience is used to this. Okay. And finally, rounding out the lovely ladies at the table, we have Miss...
Tara Millard.
I knew that.
You did.
Mm-hmm. And what do you teach?
I teach English 3 along with writing electives. I'm exclusively writing electives now. And I replaced Bert when he retired. So.
That was only, 4 or 5 years ago?
It was 5.
5. Mm-hmm.
Time flies when you're having fun, I guess.
Okay, sure. Anyway. Yes. Well, anyway, seriously or unseriously, folks, let's talk about some of the issues. I don't mean to say issues, sorry. What it's like to be a high school teacher. Let's start with Josh. Josh, how long have you taught high school and where did you teach? Or what places, please?
So this is my 14th year teaching. I've been at Forest City. This is year 11. Before that, I spent 1 year at Burlington in southeast Iowa. And before that, I spent 2 years at a little school called Nishnabotna in extreme southwest Iowa.
What was the name of that again, please?
Nishnabotna.
Sounds Russian.
Sounds weird.
Oh, maybe I have some listeners in
Nishnabotna.
Nishnabotna.
Nish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And do you teach exclusively biology? No, don't you have anatomy too? Did you say that and I missed it?
Probably. Biology, anatomy and physiology, physical science, and applied chemistry.
Okay, thank you.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
It is. It's all in one period.
Yeah, seems like it.
And Miss Janelle, where did you teach before and how long have you been here?
I was in a little town in western Iowa, Aurelia. So I was there for a year, subbed a year before that, and then this is year 30 at Forest City. So
that's a minute.
It's a hot minute.
It goes just like that, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever sub second grade?
I did not sub elementary. I was always in
Wise
secondary.
choice. Okay.
Was that my choice? Or was it randomly? Oh, okay. You chose that.
I think, yeah.
Oh.
I don't think I was ever in an elementary. I was.
Okay.
If you did, you blacked it out.
I mean,
Oh, that's the answer.
yeah.
Well, I mean,
If you haven't subbed, there
subbing
are
is a
so
great
many stories. for
Yeah.
subbing.
Subbing is a great way to figure out what you want and what you don't want.
Okay,
also
well,
a great way for
that's
kids
going to
to
be
mess with
another
you.
one of my sessions. So we'll be talking about subbing. Okay, so Miss Tara, tell us about how many years you've taught and where you taught and what's going on.
I have taught all 5 years at Forest City, and I was kind of a latecomer to teaching. I went back and got my teaching degree, and I just happened to have attended Forest City as well. So I'm a parent. I had kids in the district, and it just happened to be that position opened up. And I did not sub. I've never subbed. Maybe someday I will. I don't know. I hear it. I hear it can be fun to switch things every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Most of it has been very, very good.
Wow.
Very, 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 very good. So with that being said, let's talk about high school. Why did you all aspire to stay in the world of high school? What is it that appeals to you about high school students? I'm opening it up to all three of you. Don't jump in all at once. Just Sparrgrove. Come on, let's go.
Pause.
I knew I wanted to teach science.
Okay.
I wasn't for sure at middle school or high school.
Okay.
The first school I taught at, I actually taught both. I had middle schoolers and high schoolers. I just liked the high schoolers a lot more. So when I was moved on from there, I definitely was looking more for the high school side of it. High schoolers, I like teaching high schoolers because they're a little bit more mature. They're definitely a little bit more mature than middle schoolers, depending on the day.
He's not wrong.
Yeah. And then also just like they're at that fun stage where they want to be treated like an adult, but they're still like wanting like attention, and there's still that kid aspect in them a little bit more so in middle school. And also just high schoolers are a lot fun. You can have a lot more fun with high schoolers than you can middle schoolers, because middle schoolers don't always get it, but high schoolers usually do.
Yeah. To be fair, I think middle schoolers are working a lot out, like with themselves. That's what I've noticed. I wanted even I would say even freshmen sometimes. I feel like there's a little bit of regression when you get to high school, just because you're the underdog all of a sudden. But yeah, I feel like middle schoolers, you either like it or you don't.
Now, the people I interviewed from the Forest City Middle School staff said they would teach at no other level.
Really?
They absolutely adored middle school students. And that was very refreshing to hear.
Yeah,
did.
well, yeah.
That was my first. I was mostly middle school and did not think I would, and I really liked it.
Did you?
Yeah, I did a lot. They're sort of that same thing. They're in between that little kid stage and they're funny too, but they're in a whole different
Was it
world.
6th grade, 7th grade?
6th,
8th?
7th, and 8th. I had different.
Oh, you had a different one?
Yeah, I did like an exploratory
Oh, that sounds
class.
fun.
Yeah, so I liked that a lot. And really, I mean, I always thought I wanted high school primarily because I didn't know if I had energy enough for
Middle school?
elementary.
Oh, elementary, yeah.
So, but I love little kids. If anybody that knows me knows I do love kids, but personality wise, all day when they're not, I thought high school worked better. Kind of what Josh was saying too. It's just you can have those interactions with them on, a level where you're joking, and they can
They
kind
get
of
it.
they get it, and
You can
if you say something, it's like
sarcastically,
okay. I mean, if I were to ever use sarcasm, yeah,
hypothetically
speaking. But little ones, it's an entirely different
Yeah.
way of interacting with them, which I like too.
It's just different. I like the way the day moves. It moves
That's true,
fast. You see a lot of kids. I don't know that I could do elementary just because you have one class of kids, and I'm sure it's great for building relationships. There's lots of times that I think I wish I had a little bit more time to just hang out because it moves pretty quick. But it really is fun to just see all the different kids throughout the day.
Now, here's a question for you three. You've mentioned it. I don't think it's used very much on the middle school or the elementary level, the use of sarcasm. Now,
Oh boy.
I have been In all the education classes I have taken, they have said no.
No sarcasm. Yep.
I disagree.
Let's hear it.
All right. I think there's a certain level of sarcasm that you can use with high schoolers if they understand you.
Mm-hmm.
I would never, nor would any of you, use sarcasm to intimidate or put down a student. Never.
No.
But if they know that you are using it for humor purposes,
Yeah, to be funny.
why not?
Mhm.
That's just me. So you find that true? Yes.
I think
I
that
find they like it.
I think they do need to be entertained to some extent when you're teaching, and a little bit of sarcasm for humor does maybe keep them enthused. So, I think it's important that the kids know that you're slightly fun. So, if you're serious all the time, sarcasm or no sarcasm, if you're serious all the time, that makes for a boring class. I don't know how
Yeah.
Sparrgrove feels about it.
Oh, yeah.
But I found, and then we'll have Josh's viewpoint on it. But from my subbing, I thought for some reason that I could use effective, positive sarcasm, which you might think is a contradiction of terms, but I don't think it is. In elementary, and that doesn't work.
It goes right over their heads.
And I get that. I
Literally
totally
no
get that.
response. No response.
They can stare at you. and again, so I always have to change gears, whichever level I'm at. So, but in the high schools I have been in, the classrooms, and again, I'm not saying that I purposely do it, but if I know that they understand where I'm coming from, then I use it. Josh, what about you?
I agree with that. I mean, it's not something you break out on day one with a new class.
No.
It's definitely one of those things where you have to learn the kids, their personalities, how their personalities all mesh when they're in your class.
Yes.
But I think especially when you develop those relationships with kids, they love it. I mean, they love it when you have a good sarcastic comment back to them because they are teenagers. They are so sarcastic themselves.
They are.
Like-
They really are.
That's what they want. So as long as you know who you're doing it with, it can be a lot of fun. The kids absolutely love it. So
All right.
You're never sarcastic, right, Janelle? Never.
Yeah.
Not one time.
I don't believe it.
And I know every time I do, I'm like, by the way, I'm not supposed to.
I think that you know your audience. I happen to have a very sarcastic child, and she gets it from her father. And of course. And I think when Hara did volleyball, when she was like 8, I think you guys were cracking jokes that probably other kids had no idea. So I think it just depends on the person. And from a parent perspective, I don't see the harm, but I do think that if you're joking with a kid, that's a private conversation, and as long as it's funny. But
I think though the reason for the not having sarcasm is when it is used in a non-productive way, or if it's meant to belittle somebody. I think that's the sarcasm they're referring to. Where
You're
like,
probably right.
oh, thanks for joining it, that kind of thing.
yeah,
But when it's used at, like,
I can't even tell you some of the things.
No.
I can't even recall. It's just
but if you're, I
Banter.
think if it's, and,
it can build rapport.
and it becomes maybe even a class joke in that particular section. And it's just that it's like something that somebody says, and then you just everybody kind of goes, kind of popcorns off of that. But
I think every class has their little inside
things.
jokes and things that they.
Their own personality.
Yeah, I think that you maybe don't know your students well enough if you don't have a little banter, especially at a high school level. But
All right. I want you all to think of 1 to 2 adjectives that describe a teenager. Why are you so quiet?
waiting for you to call it up.
Now, wait a minute.
making sure it's appropriate for the radio.
Well, of course.
Running it through the
This is not a radio, Josh Sparrgrove. This is a podcast.
Still.
In a podcast, anything goes. Not that.
Along with my job.
My.
No.
That was a funny.
That was a funny.
I'd say they're very humorous.
Right.
And some of that humor comes from their unpredictability too, because you just like
You just never know. I
don't
think
know.
that's fun. I mean, there's there are teachers out there that probably don't teach in high school that don't like that up and down. But you really, I mean, if you sign up for it, then it can be kind of fun. You just have to take it in stride. That's the way kids are at that age. But I would say that they're fun.
That's
I
your
wouldn't
word?
say. I would also say that they can be challenging, especially if you don't take the time to get to know them, or you just can't because you don't see them often enough. There are kids that I wish I knew better, but depending on how they engage with you, it just depends. Every kid is different.
Thank you, Josh Sparrgrove.
I'd say maturing, especially as a sponsor or a coach. Like, it is so much fun to see, like, start with those kids as freshmen when they're still trying to figure everything out, and going with them all the way through their senior year, seeing that growth and that maturing process occurring and developing that relationship. So,
And is that from a teaching perspective or like a fine arts extracurricular perspective?
I'd say both.
yeah.
Because I've had
Do you
kids
see
that you
them
have as freshmen, and then you get them as juniors or seniors, and they're entirely.
I wish I got I honestly don't meet kids till this, the second half. And I wish I knew them for longer, because honestly, seniors aren't around as much. So I feel like I'm really getting to know them because I have mostly juniors. There's a few sophomores that take electives, but I wish I had them for longer because but that's just one of those things.
Let's talk about the work ethic of young people.
Oh, I thought
Now-
you meant for us. Well,
Many people, in general, these are just comments I hear. They'll say, I don't know how you can possibly work with high school people. They don't want to do anything. They absolutely have no motivation. They only care about the fun things. They do not care about an education. Now, I'm asking you three, what do you think about that?
hasn't that always been said about teenagers? I don't think it's a generational thing.
I think it goes along with teenagers saying old people are fuddy-duddies and boomers and sticks in the mud.
Duddy.
Fuddy-duddy.
Fuddy-duddy. I would say
fuddy-duddy, Bert.
boomers probably the
Boomer,
term
yo.
most popularly
Yeah.
at this point. I tried to explain to them what a boomer was, and it's not that.
Bring me
I
in.
am not
I'll
a
show them what a
boomer.
boomer is.
My mother is a boomer. I am not a boomer.
I think anyone over.
I know, like
Older
that
than
is a
them.
generation
Yes.
between 1955 and 70? 65?
I don't know the exact
yeah.
cutoff.
And yeah, they just, no, they didn't sell it.
But do you find that they're largely self-motivated? Because I was always taught that as a high school teacher, they are supposed to be self-motivated. I am not supposed to hold them by the hand, so to speak.
Intrinsically motivated.
Yes, that's the word, intrinsically motivated.
I think it happens. It depends on how much choice the kids have. I mean, people aren't motivated to do something that they're not interested in. So as a teacher, you're either helping them gather their interest, or in my case, I sort of give them some choice, and then you don't have to spend as much time motivating them. But I mean, I teach English class, and so I don't know, my department might be totally different than science. I can't imagine.
I think it's one of those where it depends so much on the teacher and the student. Because, like, there are students who, like, in English may not be motivated because it's not their thing, but they love science, or they love business, or they love industrial tech or math. Like, you talk to, like, those teachers, and they're the greatest. And, like, in your room, they're a pile of mud. Like,
A pile of mud.
like they're there.
fine.
They're there. And that's as much as you're going to get out of them. But in another class, they're, outstanding leaders.
Yes. That's very true.
I will say, though, giving them time to talk about things and to discuss things, and that's part of my content area, of course, so that, I mean, that's kind of built in, but they have to arrive to their own learning. Everyone is that way. I mean, when I was in high school, I wasn't trying to learn things. So to some extent, sometimes it's even a trick. They're learning stuff and they're practicing skills and they don't even 100% know, but they'll go with you anywhere if they trust you.
Yep.
They really will.
That's the key, I think. Trust.
Mm-hmm.
They have to trust that you know what you're talking about.
And that
And
you
they
care.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's it. Okay, I want to talk to you about standards and benchmarks.
Oh, please, Kim.
How many do you have, Janelle? Do you have any? Do you
That
have
are written
state?
for me?
Yeah.
Some of them. Look, I teach a lot of different classes.
Oh, I was going to say, well,
Okay,
what about
Let's
the others?
back up a little bit, ladies. For the audience out there that may not know what I mean by standard and the benchmark, could you three define what is meant by standard and benchmark that guides what you do in the classroom? Because let's face it, folks, you don't just go in and say, well, I just feel like doing this. Well, I mean, within reason. You can take the standards and benchmarks and you can mold them to what you like. I get all that. But what is that? What is that as a guiding force? Josh?
No pressure.
So I suppose the correct definition would be it is what the state says that is needed to be taught and learned by the students over the course of their time. What I like to think of it
Benchmarks are
is
sort of the
smaller
meaningless-
steps.
Yeah.
What I like to think of is it's what people who've never taught think everyone should know in way too short of a time.
How many do you have? Because I have
72.
hundreds, I swear. There are hundreds.
There are 72 science standards, and the last year they are tested is the end of their sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So it's impossible to get all those in before.
Well, for me, I try to pull my skill ones that I can put in a rubric. And then for juniors, they have content ones too. You have to teach a play and you have to, mostly juniors learn American content, but there are certain content. Do you guys have content too?
Science is mostly solid content.
Is it?
Like this is the material that needs to be covered.
Which can be hard because I think that content is more difficult to teach than skill, because skill is you're doing this and then you're doing this. And it can be, I don't know, how do you, is it a lot of just tests and not as many projects as you'd like?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that math is probably really similar where
Yeah.
they have to cover, because there's really only one way to do it. Well, maybe there's more ways. I'm not a math person. Poor math. They can't even defend themselves, but.
Janelle?
Mine are a little different because I teach
Mm-hmm. Core.
non-core classes. And so a lot of mine are a little more vague, which is also incredibly hard because,
Yes.
It'll be like these, as a global X, Y, and you're like, okay, how do you measure somebody's?
Do you plug your things into 21st century skills? Is that
Some of
how
them,
you?
yeah. But like computers, there's really not any standards
Mhm.
out there for most of those unless they're programming, and we're not programming. So mine's a little different. Yeah. Ours are a little more generic, and
Do you think that it being open makes it even more stressful to plan?
it does, just because I don't know when you're required to incorporate those, and you're like, okay,
Mhm.
but they
Yeah, you teach
Fit.
required classes. There's required things that kids have to take. That would be a nightmare.
personal
for me.
finance does have more specific ones, but the other ones are pretty
Now, personal finance, that's required by the state.
not anymore.
Oh, it
Oh,
isn't?
really?
Oh,
No.
my goodness.
I don't think it is as of
Okay.
last year.
Okay.
Last year was the last year.
Okay.
But we still have it as a requirement, and I
Okay,
think
okay.
that needs to continue.
Sometimes I feel
Okay,
like I
okay.
need to take that class
Mhm.
at least one more time, maybe more.
Now, let me ask you as a group, how many credits does a student have to graduate from Forest City High School?
Oh gosh, we just switched. That's
Yeah.
kind of a loaded question. We just switched from trimesters to semesters.
Right.
So our credit count is way different than it used to be. And I think it's confusing to even track right now. But I have no idea. Do you
Okay,
guys
I don't
have
mean
any?
to put you on the spot. I'm just
I mean, you could.
40 or 50,
okay.
somewhere in there.
That would make sense.
Sounds about right.
Now that you're,
I want to say
semester.
48, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That might be on the high end.
How do you feel about semesters over trimesters? Because trimesters were done for, seems like centuries at Forest City High School. Well, that's how long I taught. But anyway,
wasn't the original intent for them to be able to try a lot of things, to try things out?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we did it for so long. But I think now, just to sync up with all of our NIAC classes and our Waldorf classes for seniors, for them to come back and take things during the day, the schedule really needs to be similar. So, because it really was, I have seniors oftentimes that need another English credit, but they're in a hub. And so I think a lot of kids that are seniors spend less time in the library maybe. And that it just, I like semesters. I don't know how you guys feel. It's
It probably
more
didn't
time.
impact you too much, did it? Did you have a lot of trimester classes?
I teach 2 electives and they're writing electives. So those are longer. I did have to add units. But I mean, the grade wise, the kids aren't so frantic to get through everything. It isn't a push to get to the end. And because before it really felt like a numbers game, and it probably still is to some extent, but the kids have more time to learn things. I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? Is it different in your department, Janelle?
It is, because mine are almost all trimester or were almost all trimesters. So a couple of mine went from 2 trimesters down to a semester. So then I had to tweak that, and then some of the others went from 1 trimester to a semester. So then that extended those. So initially it was so they could take more electives, and we just don't have the staff or the electives. And because kids now are doing a lot more Waldorf, NIAC, I don't think we have the kids in the building taking those electives. So it I think it just served its time, kind of thing.
Yes.
So
Josh Sparrgrove?
I agree with everything they said. So
Okay, so now I want to ask you, and this I saw changed radically in the years that I taught, the role of being a senior in a school.
I think it's sad.
Okay.
That part I do feel a little bit sad
I
about.
found, this is me, and that they were non-existent as seniors. You
Yeah.
never saw them. Now, tell me what they're doing. You tell me about NIAC. Tell me about the hubs. You tell me about Waldorf. How does that work with Waldorf? And again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but can they take as many classes as they want? Or is there a limit? Or do you have to have a certain grade point average in high school before you can? How does that all work?
I think there are some guidelines.
there's a limit because I think they have to stay below a full-time student.
Okay.
So I think they have to be less than 12.
They can take 12 though, which if you were going to college would be a full.
It would be.
That would be a full load.
Well, and then there are some kids who will do morning at NIAC, do a NIAC hub, and then do afternoon at Waldorf. So they're taking 16, 18 credit hours,
Crazy.
but they're splitting it between 2 places, so they're not considered a full-time student in either one.
I did not know that was going on. Did you?
There's not very many who do it.
I was going to say,
but
do a
there's
lot of kids do that?
No, I think it's a small handful who do it, but they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when you go to college, there are kids that can handle 18, 20 semester hours.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll even pay extra
Mhm.
to do that
Mm-hmm.
just to get done with it faster.
Mhm.
I'm not one of those people, but
Mhm.
I do miss having the seniors in the building. I went to school at Forest City during a time when seniors were in the building,
Mhm.
and it really does add a little school spirit. I think school spirit isn't the same, but I also think as a parent that having those opportunities is a great thing. So there's pros and cons.
Oh, of course. Of course.
But yeah, I think that school spirit feels differently.
I was gonna say the culture of the high school is different. You don't have the oldest, most mature
Mm-hmm.
kids in the
Yeah, to
building
kind of
anymore.
lead the chaos of, I mean, homecoming and battle of the classes. We don't get as many seniors for sure. It just, I meet most of the kids as juniors. So maybe for me, it's just really sad because I just got to know them and now they're leaving. But what do you think, Josh?
I agree. I think then even going on like the side of like athletics and fine arts, like those seniors aren't there to give the school spirit. They're not there as much as leaders, and a lot of them get so busy doing that stuff they kind of start pulling back from their high school activities.
Do they? Do you think you lose seniors?
There's a couple, I think. I mean, I don't think we lose a big amount, but I think every year there's a couple who, they're at college all day, so they're checked out. They're not wanting to go back to high school kind of.
It almost feels like they're moving on early.
Yeah.
And I do think that is unique to our district because we have a lot of opportunities, but I mean, it is what it is, I guess. I can't see it going back.
No.
Can you? Yeah. I think there's too much benefit for the kid and the parent. I mean, it's a free college class plus the experience of doing it. So
that's what I really enjoyed, as you have mentioned, of teaching juniors. They were invested in school. They still were invested. And that made such a difference, I felt, in the classroom and with their activities. And again, I get both sides of it. I do. If I were a parent and I knew that my child could, in a sense, get a 3 years of college.
What parent is going to say,
I mean,
I'm not sure if you should do that.
I get that.
Unless you truly felt that your child was not ready. I think that's probably the only scenario where a parent's going to be like, I'm not sure you should do that. But, or if it's a grade situation, I do think that they kind of screen kids as far as, because if you don't pass the class, you pay. You pay for everything. Yes. So I think that there's some sort of screening. I don't think they'd set a kid up for failure.
No. Okay. Which brings me up to another point. Let's talk about testing and grading in high school. Let's talk about formatives and summatives. Now, convey to my listening audience as they're scratching their heads saying, formatives and summatives, what are those? For my audience of one. Hopefully it's gone up to 5 by now. But what is a formative when you're doing an assignment, and what's a summative? And how does that work effectively? Which you've done it for a number of years at the high school now.
Yeah.
Do you think that people really don't know the difference between formatives and summatives, like parent-wise?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely no.
Really? I didn't know. I think I must live in a bubble. I did college 5 years ago. So in my brain, this is what it has always been. But
I think probably our freshmen, I think a lot of the parents coming in, because they've been exposed to it a lot more, but a lot of parents had kids that came through before this was really kind of a thing.
Yeah.
the middle school does it, and they do it so the kids come in knowing, which is maybe why I thought that everyone knew. But
let's tell our listening audience, what is a formative? Just Sparrgrove. You give a unit test over cells.
That would be a summative.
yeah.
Okay, then back up. What would be a formative? And what is the point of a formative? Nobody's given me a definition. Now, come on.
So a formative is like a check for understanding. So the point of the formative is to see how the student is progressing over the course of the unit. And then if they're struggling, to go back and give them help and extra practice or whatever needed to get them up to where they're being successful. Or if they're doing really well, then to move on. So it would be like your quizzes, your daily check-ins, guided practice, so just general practicing what you're doing, and then the summative is like your final end of the unit test or project or paper, where we've covered all of this, now it's time to see how much you've actually learned, and that's your big grade.
Now it seems to me essentially then that you do formatives, that they should all be getting A's on their summatives.
That's the idea.
Talk to me about the reality of that.
They're doing the work, they should be getting A's or B's on their summative.
So just Sparrgrove, and then I'm going to get to Janelle. So I take a summative test. I receive a D.
Yeah.
What is the policy? What's the deal? I say to you, please, Mr. Sparrgrove, I would like to redo that.
Well, you get one chance to redo it, but you're going to have to do some extra work to show that.
What do you mean by extra work?
Might be some extra view practice or coming in and meeting with the teacher. It's going to vary depending on the class and the teacher.
What if I don't want to do that?
Well, then you got to keep the grade you get.
I would say
That is mean.
life is mean.
Yes, it is. It is. Janelle?
It looks different for different people. Mine, how does yours look? Mine is not exactly the way that he described.
I get that. And I'm going to get to you, honey.
It might still be mean. I'm just going to.
In my classes, it's a lot of the practicing is the summative. We do it together. They do it alone a couple times. We're checking, and it can either be an individual student doesn't get it, but you might find out as a whole, it's like, okay, we don't have that. We need to
go back
and do that one again. And then for me, my retakes typically are going to look like if they're below the 80% mark and want to pursue the reteach, then I usually have some sort of activity that kind of is stuff that they didn't do well on the test that they need to go back and practice some more. They have to meet with me, and we go over the things that they weren't clear on in the first test, and then they can retake it.
Do you guys ever have a time where a kid cannot redo a summative? Or do you let kids redo everything?
I think the only time I'd say no is if it's like right at the end of the semester. Like, we're not going to have time for you to come back, especially spring semester. I have done a couple like presentations where I haven't allowed them to do again because then to get them to come back in and present and finding that time.
Yeah. So the reason why I ask is because, and actually I had a teacher ask me about this today. We had a big argument essay. An argument is difficult. It's very complicated for your brain. And we do an annotated bibliography where you work out your thesis and your sources, of course. And then there's, feedback. You have a whole rubric of feedback. And then there's a draft where you fill out an outline and then you get feedback over all of those ideas. And then we have a summative final essay. And the question was if this particular student could make corrections. And I said no. And honestly, essays are really the only thing that I would say no to, just because we had, multiple drafts. I feel like by that summative, if we're not going over feedback and you're not interested in feedback or you didn't follow the feedback, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that would be my only, but I think that the goal of the formative summative is that you are listening or exploring where you stand formatively so that by the time you get to the summative, it's there. If that makes sense. Summative is the sum of your knowledge. Formative is your knowledge forming.
So for your grading systems, my happy three, what percentage of your grades would be formative? How does that work?
15%, isn't it?
Is it 15 or 20? Is it 15?
15 and then 85%'s the summative.
And then there's guided practice too. I mean, guided practice is nothing. And then formative, and then it's meant to be so that your summative is worth the most.
Okay, clarify something for me. Guided practice is different from formative?
Yes. Well, I don't put it in my grade book as a score. Yeah. It's kind of just a check-in for me to see, did I teach it well? Or are they lost? And sometimes...
For me, the guided practice is the first time we go through.
There's also the layer of I will model it for you.
That's when I use
We'll do it together. We'll work in groups and you're going to show me what you can do on your own. So there's that layer too. So it's not like you're just throwing them in the ring. Well, let's see what you can do formatively. There's more steps than that.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So another term that I don't think my audience may be familiar with would be rubrics. You have said rubrics.
I did say rubric. I said rubrics.
You're not the only one. And can you please explain in layman's terms what a rubric is?
Do you want me to talk?
What
Do
does
you
it
do
look
rubrics?
like?
We have them, but just for like overall general, either the unit or a specific project.
So the English department lives and dies by rubrics. Every formative and summative has a rubric and it plugs into the standard and it shows it reflects from the standard, usually a skill, what you can do. So for each skill, as part of the standard that we're asking them to do, we give them written feedback over how it's going, with the expectation that sometimes I require the kids to go back and make corrections depending on what we're doing and how important it is for the next step. And then if I had them do corrections, that would be kind of a guided practice. But the English department lives and dies by them, because writing, speaking, those are kind of complex things that we're asking them to do. So rather than give them a number and they can guess, we write the feedback down, and it's on a scale. You have mastery, proficient, not proficient, or approaching, not proficient. And then I use attempted because I always like,
Good try.
yes, but no.
Story of my life. Attempted. Yes.
So some kids get a kick out of attempted, but some kids are, what? Yeah, I don't know. So maybe that's just an English thing. Is that just an English thing, maybe? Do you do rubrics, Janelle? Yeah, you do?
Yeah. I used them more, though, before we went to the standard ones. I don't feel are as descriptive as my old rubrics used to be. But yeah, it's just a level of like, where are you at on this particular skill? What level of understanding and what's areas that could be improved on?
Do you guys use it for everything, or is it projects?
I do it for most things
Yeah.
on computer stuff. Personal finance, I haven't.
Oh, yeah.
Other than if they were to write something, then I would. Excuse me.
I think Spanish uses rubrics too.
Oh,
I
I'm
don't know about
I'm
math.
sure they do.
I don't think math. I think math is kind of like science, where there's more like
Content.
content, and it's more of a general. We use our rubric in science as kind of like, we go over at the beginning. So it's like, okay, if you want to be fully proficient and know what you're talking about, here's the content you're going to need to know. Then, if you're happy with the B or C, here's where you should be. So kind of give them a preview of what we're going to cover and kind of how in depth they need to get if they want to be mastery or proficient or those different levels.
Mm-hmm. So in your classrooms, are you required to put the standards on the board or make clear to the students what the standards are that you're addressing?
Yes.
Learning targets.
Yeah, I
I'm
usually
sorry,
put
learning
learning
targets.
targets.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't put them on the board. I have
Okay.
too many
Yes.
Things.
different class. So I put them in on my
Sure.
Google Classroom.
Sure.
I have it on each day. Like, here's the learning targets. for today.
Which brings me to another wonderful topic.
Oh, boy.
Does it?
I would like you to talk to our wonderful audience about what is a Google Classroom. I think it's a gift from God.
It is kind of. Especially through COVID.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get religious, but
Yeah, especially through COVID and e-learning days. I'm not sure. Probably nothing could be accomplished without Google Classroom and e-learning days.
explain for an
Email.
audience, Josh Sparrgrove, what a Google Classroom is.
So our school uses the Google Suite. So our emails are all Google based. So Google Classroom is the online platform we use to share assignments, to collect assignments, to communicate with students without having to email them all individually. We can post announcements. So pretty much it's just an online platform that is wonderful to use. There's a lot of great things they've been able to do with it, and they continue to update it. So like Tara said, during COVID, they attached Google Meets to Google Classroom, so that when we had to meet by Google Meets, the kids just knew to go on the classroom and click on the Meet link there.
Yeah, it really does. It's an organization tool. It helps, and it's good communication between us and the kid. I think it can even make rubrics, and
Yep.
It does. That's how I have mine on.
is
there.
it? It can do quizzes, like if you're assigning.
Yeah, you now can attach YouTube, and you can ask questions over the video.
Even
which
at certain points in the video, you
Yeah,
can
so
have
it
a
can-
question flash.
I did on e-learning. That's
Did
what
you? Did you like it? I have not used that tool yet. It is
yeah.
very technical, and I'm not sure I can handle it. Maybe I need to go see Janelle.
on CV.
I do the Google question, the one single question that it posts. and you have to respond. It's very low.
And now
tech.
you can do individual like learning sets and stuff. I haven't played with that a lot. And you can also do grading through it. So there is a grading component. But
Which brings me to another subject. Talk about grading. So if a student or a parent wants to know what a child is achieving in a certain class, this is completely out there on the computer, correct?
Oh, yeah.
There's no, they can see it.
Absolutely. At
Yeah.
any time.
I print my rubrics for that, and it's very efficient. I will say that sometimes students will tell their parent that it's all the teacher's fault.
I'm shocked.
I know no
I
one
am
else
absolutely
is.
shocked.
But I think for
Weirdly.
at Infinite Campus, every family has
Infinite Campus.
Yes.
That's what it's called.
And I will say you can see the numbers in Infant Campus day by day, but I'm not a grade hoverer. So it is possible as a parent that your child could be failing and you would have no idea. That is possible. And it doesn't give a lot of details as far as what the assignment entailed or how they did on it. I mean, it's very numbers driven. So when
it's a grade book. I mean, that's what people would see as a grade book.
Yeah, essentially that's just a grade book. It's not the whole picture. So when I do have a parent that is wondering, I just give them the rubrics, and it's all there in the writing. You can't really get around it. So for me, it's a tool.
May I ask you three how often you update your, is there...
Like a grade book?
Yes. Is there a guideline from administration saying you should say that you give a major summative test, that you have to have those grades on so many days after the test, or is that...
I don't think we do.
No.
I do like that about administration, that it's left open, because a multiple choice test is different than an argument essay.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
But I do update mine daily. I will not update it more than twice in a day, because you'll always have kids that are like, when are you going to grade it? Are you going to grade it now? Are you going to grade it now? You've been waiting on it 2 weeks. I gave it to you today. Where is my grade? So, but it is in real time.
Yes.
So a parent or a kid can see it instantly. It's a wonder, but it's also stress.
When they have a math test and they're all hovering the next period, refreshing every 30 seconds, like,
Yeah.
put it away. They will get it graded and put in before the end of the day, probably. Leave it alone.
Impatience is part of a high school person?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. When they're worried about failing a test.
They were sarcasm, folks.
How often do you guys, I usually have either one formative or one summative per week that we're working on. So I usually have something that I always need, a bigger thing that I need to put in the grade book over the weekend. I try to set it up so that I have a weekend to put those things in. How do you guys do it? I don't really know how other people do it.
Like in computers, as they get done, I usually have them come right up and we look through it together.
Oh, really?
So then I'm grading it with them.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
Or I grade it and then they come up and we... I found that when I gave them written feedback, like I would go through and it would take hours to add comments to everything, each person, because, when I was in Excel and Word, I had to download it, upload it, make comments down, and it just took forever. And then they just look at the grade.
So it's almost like a conference.
So so it's just like a little mini check-in. They come up and I'm like, okay, that one was great. Look at this, and then I just kind of show them what happened or what didn't work.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
And then, then my grade for most of those things happen almost immediately on those tests. I give myself a little grace, a couple days or whatever. So
I'd say for me, usually once or twice a week, updating formatives. When I do summatives, I usually try to get back to the kids by the next day, but that's just me.
It depends on what's going on, too.
It depends what's going on. And
a quiz, set quizzes up so that Google will give them their answers immediately. I don't even have to. I just can collect the scores. But for something like an argument essay, I've been grading those about a week while they're working on ISAS, but it's kind of the timing of it too, and what they need. If we're in the middle of a formative, I have to turn it around in a day, maybe two, for 70 kids, and you just do it because it needs to get done, and they need to know. They need to know. Ideally, as soon as you can let them know, you should let them know.
Yes. Yeah. How many periods a day are you in school? 7 period day?
7 period plus study hall.
Yep.
And pride time.
time.
And then
then,
pride time.
okay, which my audience would like to know, what is pride time? What is that?
It is a time for teachers and students that need to meet to either reteach, if students are maybe not proficient in an area, if they need some sort of assistance, then remediation, they go in and meet with a teacher one-on-one, or two or three in a group.
Sometimes
if there's
it's small groups. Yeah.
small groups. I sometimes will have kids, I'll call them in if they're if they've been absent and I need them to get things
Something
done. And ideally, it will also be used for extension. So kids that are understanding concepts would also have a chance to maybe do more advanced work. We just haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah.
How long have we had Pride Time? Has it been 2 years, 3 years?
3.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
I want to say it's 3, but maybe it's only been
So what was done prior to that? If you didn't have pride time, if you didn't have this time built into the schedule, for example, at Garner Hayfield Ventura High School, they call it flex time.
Oh.
It's the same concept. Anyway, and I've been at Lake Mills, and I don't believe they have anything like that. But how did you find you could get to students if you didn't have that built-in time? Did they come before school or after school?
We still had study hall, so that was your
Okay.
That was a one. Everybody had.
I was trying to see a lot of kids in study hall.
Okay.
And honestly, study hall is still very public. It's a public time. when you come to see a teacher, you're an audience to whoever else is in their study hall. And some kids, if I were in that position, I would be one of those kids too, that it's kind of intimidating. Pride time is more private.
Yes.
I don't have anybody. I don't have a Pride time group. I believe math
Actually,
doesn't.
My study hall is actually way smaller than my pride time.
Yeah.
So,
Is it really?
Okay.
So I'm not sure why that would happen, but.
because you don't have pride time.
Yeah. So we get extras.
Oh,
His English.
I'm sorry. Where did they go? I don't know. Oh, whoopsies. Oh, you're where they go. Oh, it's a magical time for me
There you go. There you go.
where there's only a few children.
Yes, yes. So when do you have to report to work in the morning?
Before 8.
Before school starts.
By 8. Yeah.
By 8.
By 8, okay. So say, for example, you are running late or something. I guess I want to speak positively about the administration. I always found, yes, Mr. Baker.
Do you think he's listening?
He should be, but anyway. But anyway, the point is, he was always very accommodating. Very accommodating.
He is.
Very accommodating. Okay, so I give kudos to him. But the point is, I'm saying if you have a family issue or something like that, you do feel with administration that you can talk with them about this. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. If
Good.
something happens,
Yeah.
I've never had this happen before, but I'd like to I think that if something happens and for some reason you cannot be in your class because something happened between you and work, someone will go down there and help you, and you wouldn't get in trouble for it. I do think that, like, when you say, how much time are you spending at school? I don't think an administrator ever thinks, I don't think that teacher is working enough. They should be here more. I don't think that's a thing that administrators worry about, at least at our school. I mean, if we clocked our time, I mean, if you come in at 8, there are teachers, I'm a late stayer. I'd rather stay till 4:00 or 4:30 and grade my things because that makes sense for me. And I think Janelle is an early person.
I like to be there early,
So she preps early. So I don't know. Are other schools like that?
I would say it's pretty similar time
How do you
frame.
fit into this, Sparrgrove? When are you there?
It depends on the time of year. If it's busy season, I'm usually there early. If not, I'm usually there
What's early?
6:37 for
What?
speech practices.
Oh, that makes sense.
If it's
Never
not,
mind.
if speech is not going on,
Like
it's
6:30. What are you doing? Are you walking the halls with Janelle? She does that. What day do you do that? Tuesdays?
Oh, every day.
Yeah.
But
Oh, you do every day?
Tuesdays just happen to be a day.
Or
I saw a
those
lot
are
of
the busy days?
But again, I don't think you can ever convince your listening audience who are not teachers how much time you spend. And if we ever figured out how much we were making an hour, probably about 25 cents an hour.
Honestly, yes. Well, I think that as a new teacher, it's different.
Oh,
too.
yes.
For a new teacher,
As it
it
should
is
be.
literally 25 cents an hour. Don't ever do the math if you're a new teacher. Just don't. Wait 5 years and then figure it out, because I was spending a lot more time as a new teacher for a lot less money. But the more you have built up, I think it just flows a little bit better. You can think and prepare just in a much better way.
Yes, of course.
I don't know. What would you say on that, Janelle? You're like the pro.
the seasoned.
The seasoned professional. Do you spend a lot of time prepping? Do you prep?
I would say up until maybe the last few years, I still felt like
Did you really? So there's no hope.
I thought you knew that.
I lie to myself, I guess.
But I also had classes that were continually changing. Like I picked up new classes, or we switched this, or technology changed, whatever. So I mean, I had a lot of
Changes.
changes.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be my particular area.
I do think with COVID, just in general, all teachers over the last few years have been thrown for a curve and are spending more time trying to figure out, depending on the year. Because there was a year when we did live classes while we were doing in-person classes. And when I look back on that, I think, how did I live through that?
Mm-hmm.
What was I doing?
How
I don't
did you
even
feel
know.
about that? Because that was the first year I was subbing, and you had to wear a mask and you could get close and you had to sanitize everything. And again, I'm
between
not
every
downplaying
class.
Yeah.
any of that.
Yeah.
But then when you were doing that, I thought, you couldn't get me to do that. I mean, it just wasn't part of my strengths. But was that tough?
Did you guys do live? I did live.
Yeah.
I streamed live.
Are you talking
Like
when we were
when the-
home or when we got
No,
back?
when we came back and we had in person, but there were also students that were choosing
To stay home.
to
Yes, I
stay
went
home
live
and do
as well.
online.
Right,
Yeah,
Right.
So yeah, I live streamed
Mhm.
each hour.
same.
So and then they would join in, and that
Yeah.
way they could ask questions and stuff too.
It was a trick, though. It was really a trick. Did you do the same, Sparrgrove?
Yep. So the whole go on, the worst part was when you had to start up a live and no one would join. Like that.
Yeah.
You're just like, I just spent all that time.
It's hard to it was harder to monitor them, and I felt obligated to because when they're in your classroom, you really are like, what are you doing? What are you doing now? Are you sleeping? Are you awake? Are you answering questions? And you can't really do that when they're at home.
Yeah.
I used to make them keep their camera on.
And I didn't.
You did it?
No, because I figured they could have. I mean,
Yeah, there are so many
they
ways.
didn't have to. I don't think they had. Did they have to join? I can't even remember now.
For my class, they had to join. I can't remember what the rules were.
Yeah.
But-
My biggest thing was just I didn't want them to not feel engaged. So then they would
Yes.
constantly try to chat with them too, or get them involved. But it's not the same.
You're only one person.
Yeah.
It's hard to be live and digital at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when I think about that, I think those are two really separate things. Those are two different kinds of teachers. But it's just what you had to do. So prepping has been so different. And I've only been doing this for 5 years. So prepping has been so different from year to year that I haven't even, there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't even use the next year because it would have only worked digitally. I've been looking back at my things and kind of weeding things out. And I had modules at some point, and that must have been for my online kids where I created module. I mean, a lot of cool stuff. I put a lot of time into it, but the content that you're pushing out is just, I don't know, it's just one of those things. But
all right. I just have a couple more questions for you, illustrious group of people. Talk about the use of cell phones in the building. Now, can students in high school carry their cell phones on them?
They're not supposed to be on them. They're supposed
Is that in the handbook, Josh Parker?
Yep.
it says on persons.
They're not supposed to be on the person.
Okay.
Yes.
They can have them in their computer bag, but they're not supposed to have them on them.
Okay.
Ideally, they should be in their lockers, but I'm not sure there's anyone really doing that.
Do they have time during the day that they can have access to their phones?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Between classes.
Lunch,
Yeah. Study hall, depending on the
depending
teacher.
on the teacher.
Do you guys in Pride Time let them have?
Actually, Pride Time is supposed to be the more casual. Of
Is
the
it?
two.
Yeah.
So
Well, I got that backward. For me, Pride Time, because I'm meeting with kids, is very formal, and my study hall is kind of my casual time. But
I would
so
prefer that as well. I would rather have the study hall be a little less, less structured and Pride
yeah,
Time
me too.
more,
It's
but
the end of
not-
the day, so some kids are done. Honestly, study hall for some kids is like the break between school and their next activity. And there's some kids that treat it as like, I better get this done right now. And there's some kids that just, okay.
I just want to ask you this question too. I remember when I was in school 1,000 years ago, and we were in social studies with Mr. Spur. God bless you, Mr. Spur. But anyway, love that man. Anyway, we would have tests over the capital cities.
Do you think they still do that? They used to do that in middle school.
Well, and again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but now we live in a generation of, well, just Google it. So my question to you is, has that impacted your type of testing that you do with the accessibility of knowledge right there? Because I don't think Mr. Spur would be doing that same test anymore.
Well, that gets back at the cell phone policy. So I think, removing the phone from the person was really the motivation because of the testing and being honest about where you're getting your information. That's where our cell phone policy came from. But honestly, just to be engaged in the content at the time, cell phones are just such a distraction so what was the question? Like what we're teaching? Like, do we not teach things that are
Do you
Googleable?
test over factual items?
I think that
That's
still
and
happens.
when you could just go to Google and get that information.
You can, but I also think there's a degree of things that you should just be able to know. You know, it's knowing
able
where
to
things
recall.
are in the world and knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's just.
I will say that I sometimes ask the kids to Google like vocab or terms. Like we're learning about the 1930s and we were watching Grapes of Wrath today. So yes. And so they had to search up sharecroppers and Okies. And then they share out to the group, because I do think that even if you have the ability to use a technology, there are lots of kids that don't know how to find that. And that in itself is a skill. So you'd be shocked at how many kids are like, well, what do I do? What do I Google? Or it didn't come up. Or so I think it all has its place.
Yeah.
But how the kid arrives to the information, that's always going to change. Even especially Chat GPT now. I mean, I think technology is moving
Excuse
faster.
me, what was that?
Chat GPT. You have not
Artificial
heard?
intelligence. is
Oh,
gonna
yes,
change.
I've heard of artificial intelligence.
It will write things for you.
Oh, that's what you mean.
It will be your friend. It does all kinds. Yeah, I'm serious. It does. What is the chatbots? There's chatbots where kids can speak to a AI person.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they are entertained by an AI person. You were looking at me like I have three heads. Have you really never heard of this?
No,
or you-
I just am so far removed from that.
Yeah.
I think
I would
that's
say that's
part of it.
very, I mean, that's conversations we haven't had for more than a couple of years, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
The impact of that. And it is, even writing.
Yes,
Because
for
it
me,
used to be hard to cheat at writing,
well, I know.
other than plagiarizing. Now.
Yes. So supposedly ChatGPT can be so good that your plagiarizer technology doesn't always catch it. But I will say that if a student doesn't understand the format or the content or how it's supposed to look, their AI is not going to serve them. So to some extent, it's kind of like a spell check. We've had spell check for years and years. Unless you know how to spell the difference between their ERE and their EIR, the technology isn't going to help you unless you know the difference. So there's still, you still need to know things. Even if technology helps you, you still, I do think that most people cannot spell anything correct because of AI, and it just does it for you. So you can really ingrain some bad habits. And I mean, that's just the reality of the world that we live in. You can't stop it. So, I mean, for the future, I don't know how I'm going to let kids use Chat GPT, but I
think
sure
you're going to see a lot more handwritten stuff. I think you're going to
Yes.
go back to that if you
Yes.
really truly want to know that.
I will tell you that a few years ago, I had a group of kids that they just weren't strong writers, and they never had to write in class, like in a Google form. And so rather than have them do all their writing outside of class, I had them do their writing in class, and they learned. It was painful, but they learned. And we started with paragraphs, and you had to write it that in my class, and you had to turn it in before you left. And not everything works out that way, but I don't know. Technology is probably a wonderful thing in your class, Janelle.
Yes.
Other than you have to like re-prepare. I mean, modify your lessons, but
I don't know. I haven't.
had that part affect
We haven't
you as
really.
much?
Yeah, I don't see too much from that yet.
Josh, when you do anatomy and you have dead cats and pigs, are they generated by artificial intelligence?
No,
No.
but there are starting to be like VR programs that will do human anatomy.
I think the kids
you
are
can see it
already
in 3D.
using that, aren't they?
Really?
I've had the kids talk about some sort of program that they can go in and see 3D. Are they making that up? Or is that real? Do you already have that?
I don't have that yet. That's something I should look into. Because you can do human models instead of a cat or something. So
Maybe it was a NIAC.
I think
maybe-
NIAC might have
Yeah.
some 3D stuff.
Yeah. So their technology in that way can be, when you're learning content and a visual like that
Yeah.
is really cool.
All right, thank you. Are you looking for human bodies? People that donate their bodies?
Cadavers.
Are you offering?
Well, I'd like to live a few more years.
Are you donating your body to high
I'm not
school?
donating until my pulse stops. Or maybe it already has. Anyway. All right, folks. That's it. I'm not going to ask you anymore because you're looking at me like I am tired of this. So I think we have had an enlightening discussion about high school life. And if you weren't aware of what's happening, being on the outside and never having a chance to look in, you three have brought to light so many things.
I hope in a positive way.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I feel that.
I would like everyone to know that I adore children. Whatever I said, I do love them.
Well, I think that's the bottom line for all.
Yeah,
of us.
I don't think we'd be doing
Oh my gosh, no.
what we do if we
Oh.
didn't truly
No.
adore the ups and downs and the chaos and because at the end they learn stuff.
They do.
They do.
They do. So, do you see the three of you doing this until retirement? Whatever. That is.
Yep.
Janelle
Oh,
Janelle is
jumped right on that
committed.
bandwagon, didn't she?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I don't know that I'll teach forever, but I love it now. I hate to put myself in a box. I don't know how Sparrgrove.
I can guarantee you.
I live it out contract by contract.
Oh, yeah.
Am I ready for another one? Is that how you do it, Janelle? Is that the
now I
is that the key? Is that the key to 30 years, 1 year at a time?
And bribery.
Bribery.
Not for Janelle, but what about you, Josh Sparrgrove, or would you rather work at Walmart?
No, I'm planning to stick around for a while.
Good for you. Good for you. So, and my final question is, as I said that 4 hours ago, talk about, and this will be my last question, I promise. The role of extracurriculars in high school. I always thought Forest City High School had a great plethora of extracurricular activities, such a great balance. And Josh Sparrgrove, I'm going to start with you. If you have a young person who's very involved in sports, which is perfectly fine, is there time for speech, play, musical? What's the deal?
Yes. So
Explain yourself.
He's a little bit biased.
He should be.
yeah, I mean, we are willing to work with schedules as much as we possibly physically can. So yeah, I mean, no matter how involved the kid is, if they're wanting to do fine arts, I think fine arts is always great about making a way to get those kids involved, to give them that opportunity. Kind of an interesting note, just we had PD the other day.
We did. I was just thinking of that.
And
yesterday.
they were actually showing like involvement versus GPA. And yeah, the more involved the kid was, usually the higher the GPA was. And there were a couple significant jumps
Yeah.
at
Kids
activity
that are
levels.
not in any activities was significantly
three.
lower
For GPA, yeah.
than.
Yep.
And I do think we're a big enough but a small enough district that we can't exist as individual activities without sharing kids.
Yep.
And so I think coaches and activity directors are all really good about, we know we share our kids, so we work really hard to do that.
Okay.
I'm not in I don't have, currently I am extracurricular less.
All right. So I have one more question.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So you have a young man or woman in your class
Oh, this is a scenario.
who's involved in nothing. Comes to school at 7 a.m. and sits in the cafeteria by himself or herself with a sweatshirt and a hoodie and not communicating. And they slumber into your class and they sit in the back and they don't want to be recognized or talked to. Now, what are we doing for a student like that?
I mean, I talked to
Is that a fair question?
Oh, for sure.
It's a fair question.
I think there's probably an extracurricular for every type of kid
But let's face it, Janelle, there is a certain segment.
that don't want
They
to.
don't want any part of it.
But I'll tell you what, I think the esports has opened up a door to a lot of kids too.
Okay.
that
thought
aren't
of
super communicative. They want to do their own. There's always going to be kids that don't want to do any sports.
The
And
anti-establishment.
yes,
I used to always
yes. And hopefully that kid finds a job so that they are doing something to get them out. But I mean, a kid that shows up to your room early, I have kids that sit outside my door when I arrive. And I mean, including them as much as possible is really the only thing that you can do as a teacher. Because if they're not engaging in a class, chances are they probably, unless they just don't like your class, chances are they're not engaging in an extracurricular either. And for different reasons. There are kids that have things going on at home, that have things to deal with. There are kids that just are going through, whatever, and are just that way for a while for lots of different reasons.
Do you feel that the school system, the public school system, and I don't have a preconceived answer here, I don't, is reaching out to students like that? Because I will have to tell you, as a teacher for 39 years, I was always attracted to the underdog.
Mm-hmm.
Always. The bright, intelligent students were going to be successful
No matter what.
no matter
Yep.
what. Now, it would have been easier to ignore that type of student and not try to engage. But I just felt like
Like they needed somebody.
I just felt like that. They needed to have somebody to talk with them.
Yeah.
And just get them involved with an extracurricular activity, or just recognize that they're there.
Yeah. I do have
Yeah.
kids that I check in with every day that I know. I mean, you don't know, but that I suspect maybe have obstacles in their lives. And really all you can do is open up my kids come in. I have kids that come in during lunch. I have kids that come right away in the morning that are less public times where they hang out. And I am always happy to see them. And I always talk to them about what's going on in their lives.
Don't you find that they will tell you things?
Oh, yeah.
That they would not tell other people?
Oh, yeah.
If
I
they trust you?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you have to decide if you have to do something about that information?
Potentially.
Mhm.
I don't know how you guys feel, but a lot of the kids that hang out in my room just want to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, that's a really small thing. I don't know. What do you guys say?
I
Do you
think
have
it's a big
kids that
thing.
hang out in your room?
Yeah.
I'm sure you. Okay, which brings me to my last question.
Already?
Yeah, the AA program. How does that work? What
Advisor?
Yeah, we're not talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. What is the AA program?
Advisor, advisee.
Okay, what is that?
Where we build relationships with children. It's social emotional skills, isn't it?
That's
Future
Essentially,
planning,
yep.
career planning, college planning.
And it's a group of kids you meet with every week. It's usually same-ish study hall kids. And you go through activities. We have a lot of snacks. Kids are very motivated by snacks. Yeah. Same. That's why I bring the snacks.
So it gives students and teachers and adult in the building that
They can
connect
connect with.
and that if they have questions, that's sometimes I've had advisee parents that don't know any of the teachers, so that's even if I don't have them in class, they'll contact you because you can kind of be a go-between too. So
And then with your AA groups, do you participate you get together for homecoming and do things together, or
not as much
Not
as
as
we
much
used
as
to.
we
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We used to do a lunch. A lunch. Did we do that this year? Usually it's like pizza, or it used to be you could get together as an AA and do your own thing, wasn't it? It used to be a really big chunk of time.
Yeah.
And it could be a little bit bigger. Now I feel like it's pizza for everyone or something when we have it.
Sometimes they'll or their burgers. Sometimes they'll do the burgers and the kids will bring them back to the room. We used to potluck it sometimes, yeah. But yeah, it's a time once a week, and like I said, we might look at their schedules. We might look at future plans.
Classes for next year.
Yep. There's social days.
of course.
Yeah. It's a little bit of everything. And I think that that's what they need with that time. So it's mostly about building relationships.
Right. And speaking of relationships, all of you have done a superb job because I have had the chance to work with you. And there are many, many caring faculty members at Forest City High School and good administration. And I want my audience to know, however many there are, that teachers are highly underappreciated. And teachers are so important. And teachers are really good people. I'm getting emotional.
Do you think that there's
Because-
people that don't appreciate teachers?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do. I do. I
Which
don't
is
think
too
it's a
bad.
majority, especially in this area.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you think maybe that people forget that teachers are people?
oh, are they?
They try to be
Okay,
as much as they can.
Yes, that's probably true. Yes, yes, yes.
I do think that
Mhm.
too much of everything becomes either a political issue or parents worrying about what their kid will be exposed to. And those,
Right.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but
Mhm.
it is important to remember that whoever your teacher is, they are a person and they're trying their best.
Mhm. I
So,
totally agree with that.
so
But I think people need to be aware of the time that you invest. Really important. I was always, and nobody cared, but I'll tell you, I was a weekend warrior. And so I would spend my Sundays at the school, and then another teacher, Marta Betts, would come and down to visit with me. And I always felt comfortable doing my work at school. I have always felt that way. And I could never reach that separation at all. Because then I would clean the floor or something. And so I was used to that. I was used to giving that much time, but it didn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because that was your career. It wasn't a job. It was a career. It was a calling.
I think it is.
And I know I'm on my soapbox here, but I just, after visiting with these 3 different levels of teachers, I think people really need to be aware of how influential you are and helpful you are and motivating you are. And you don't settle. And that's why we have successful students. Thank you. I want to thank you for being a part of this. Josh, Janelle, Tara. It was a lot of fun. And I want my audience to know that I am going to be doing a podcast on what it's like to be a substitute teacher. I truly am.
Is that the next chapter?
Well, it might be. For some it is. For some it is. And I highly would recommend people to do that. But I know many people who just absolutely say, I talked to a teacher at Garner the other day. It made me laugh so much. And he's getting close to retirement. He said, "Why do you do this?" I said, "Because I really enjoy it." He said, "I'll tell you one thing." I don't know if he was serious or not. You can't tell with this guy. But anyway, he said, "When I retire, I'm not even driving by this building." I was like, wow.
Okay. Did you ever have that point where you're like, when you first, or maybe even right before you retired, where you're like, I am done with this. No, you've never been like that. I do think that I'd like to think that before that change happens, not everyone maybe realizes how much a part of their life it really is.
Mm-hmm. I can't let go of it right now.
Yeah.
I can't. It's part of my lifeblood. Kids are part of my lifeblood. I have to have contact with kids. Even, it doesn't matter what the grade level is. They, as old Mrs. Doubtfire said, they steal my wool. They do. Mm-hmm. Remember that line, "Steal my wool"?
No,
Okay, well,
and I
watch the
love that movie.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to have to go home. Now I have a project. Come on, kids.
They are my emotional fix.
I think during the summer I feel like that too, where you're so structured, and then maybe you guys love your summers, but in the summer I have trouble with, there's literally no structure. And I have my own personal kids, but it's different.
It is. Anyway, folks, thank you for listening. Thanks for bellying up to the table, my happy friends here in the studio for Mr. B's dinner party. And if there are any leftovers at the table tonight, we'll let Josh Sparrgrove take those home.
Okay.
And he can give them to his dog or to his chickens. So,
That's so nice of you.
so, folks, until we meet again, I am very happy to say I've enjoyed this thoroughly, and I want to thank my wonderful group of people. And if you're ever looking for something fun to do, go into a high school, a middle school, or an elementary and volunteer, and you will find lots going on. Lots going on. All right. With that being said, arrivederci.
Mr. B's Dinner Party is hosted by Scott Bertelson, edited and produced by Troy Thompson, recorded and distributed at Sunnyside Farm Studios. Music is provided by Soundstripe and platformed by Buzzsprout. Like our page on Facebook, subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share with your friends. Listen and enjoy every other Wednesday. Conversational Morsels for the Mind on Mr. B's Dinner Party.